So this is a collection of cigar and tobacco jars that I've been collecting now for maybe about 5 or 6 years. I started it. I've collected all kinds of bottles in the past, and it got to the point where some of the stuff just got so expensive and hard to add to the collection that I kind of always liked jars. I did collect canning jars many years ago when I first started collecting. So the tobacco jars were kind of interesting, and they're pretty much obtainable, and they don't seem to be a real high price. So I thought it'd be a fun way to collect some stuff that would keep me busy looking for things without having to spend a lot of money and put something together. I think what started me was the globe barrels that everybody seems to kind of relate to when it comes to the jars. They have such a great form. They're in the shape of a barrel, Globe Tobacco Company, and they're just a nice looking jar with the bale handle on them, and they seem to attract your eye even if you're not a jar collector. So I kind of enjoyed those, and those are probably the first ones I got. Then I just decided, well, I'll just start looking for this stuff. And basically, what I discovered is you have basically two types of jars here. You have tobacco jars that held tobacco that was either chewing tobacco or smoking tobacco, and then you have jars that were cigar jars. And the cigar jars kind of are broken down into two sizes. There's jars that held 25 cigars and jars that held 50 cigars. And of course the 25 are a lot smaller, but they still vary quite a bit in size on the cigar jars because the cigars were all different sizes. So a small jar that might have held 25 cigars, there could be another one that held 25 that could be a different shape and maybe a different size because the cigars were shaped differently. But basically those two sizes on the cigar jars. Now what I noticed, the main thing that what I noticed when I started collecting was basically it's not like a lot of the bottles that you can collect in jars where there's a big variety of colors. You're kind of limited on your colors because most of these jars, whether they were the cigars or the tobaccos, were pretty much amber. We do have some variations in the amber, from the much lighter honey ambers into darker ambers, but basically they're pretty much amber. What I've seen to have found out is that the later cigar jars, the earlier cigar jars were all pretty much amber, and the later ones were clear glass, and of course a lot of those were made during the time when they used manganese in the glass, so you can get a lot of these clear jars to turn purple by putting them in the sun or under a purpling light. So they're basically either sun-colored amethyst or different shades of amber. There are a few exceptions, and one of the exceptions on the cigar jars is that U.S. Tobacco Company put out a round jar there that's in the collection. I've got 3 different ones in 3 different colors, and they come in several different shades of blue, a cobalt blue, a light cobalt blue, and several other kinds of blues, in ambers, and even in milk glass. So that's one exception where there's a blue jar in the collection. Another thing that I noticed that's kind of unusual is that you don't see any of these tobaccos or cigar jars in aqua. I do have one small one in aqua. William Kimball, which was made tobacco, made several different sizes and shapes of tobacco jars, and occasionally you will see one in aqua. I have one in the collection. It's the only one I've been able to get a hold of, so they seem to be pretty scarce. But other than that, almost everything else is from different shades of amber or purple. There's also one exception on the blue. There is a cigar or a tobacco manufacturing company, that American Eagle Tobacco Company, which I have 3 jars up there represented from American Eagle, and they did put out a barrel-shaped jar that's very similar to the barrel-shaped globe jars. They did put one out in cobalt blue, and they're quite rare, and obviously something I don't have in my collection yet, and that's kind of what I'm looking for. That would be basically the holy grail of the tobacco jars, would be that cobalt American Eagle. Also, another thing is of course that diversify the collection a little bit is to try to find them with labels, which I've done, and so I do have a number of jars represented in here that have the original labels, and it's always fun to try to find those. And so I do have some tobacco jars and some cigar jars that have original labels as well. As far as dating, I can't, I haven't been doing it that long, so I'm not an expert by any means on this stuff, but from my collecting experience, to me, I think that probably most of these cigar jars in this collection, some of the earliest ones, they probably date in the 1880s. They could go a little bit earlier, but from the 1880s back into about the 1920s, probably there could be some a little bit later. An awful lot of them seem to be around the turn of the century. With the tobacco jars, some of them seem to be a little bit earlier. There's some in there that I would guess that go back to the 1870s and probably up into the 1910s or something like that. But age, it can vary. The only way you're going to really know is by doing a lot of research on the companies, and I haven't just got into that part of it, so I can't really tell you too much on that. I just enjoy collecting the jars. I like the different forms and the shapes, and it's just fun to put together a collection. So that's kind of what I have here, and I think maybe there's, I don't know, maybe around 40 or 50 in my collection, and there's still a few jars that, obviously there's a number of jars I don't have. Something different always turns up, so there's always something out there to look for, so still a few I'm looking for, and keeps me busy.